Welcome to the candidate forum for the 2021 election. Election day is April 6th, and the time to register to vote in our state has passed. So we hope that if you wanted to vote, that you are already registered. And if not, we hope that you do so for our next election. We do encourage you to vote on April 6th, as the general municipal elections are generally the least attended elections. But as we've said in the past and continue to say, as we go into the municipal election, we have learned through the pandemic that the most important election that we have is the general municipal election for the local representation. They have the most direct impact on our daily lives. And so we encourage you to get out and vote. And the whole purpose of the forum and the individual interviews next week is for the sole purpose of letting you get to know your neighbors who are running for office here in North Kansas City. So we are going to start this evening with our candidates each giving about a 3-minute introduction of themselves. And we're going to start with Wes Graves.
Hi, my name is Wes Graves. If you do not already know me, I want to just give you a short intro about myself. I am from this area. I attended Briarcliff Elementary School as a kid, Eastgate Middle School, and I graduated from North Kansas City High School in 1999. When I was a kid, my father's business was located here in North Kansas City. After graduating from Northtown, I moved to Boston, Massachusetts, which is a walkable city with a streetcar. And I lived there for 4 years, attended Boston University. I have a degree in political science with a minor in earth science. And then since I graduated college, I've been selling real estate for RE/MAX since 2004. So I live here in North Kansas City with my wife, Robin, who is also a NKC grad, and my 2 children, Jameson and Waylon. And we all attend and are members of the First Presbyterian Church, which is next door to my house on the corner of 23rd and Fayette. And I coach baseball at Mackin Park, and I'm also the Cub Scout leader of the same Cub Scout pack I was in when I was a kid. And just briefly, I want to thank Mindy for hosting the event, and I want to thank everyone who's tuning in watching, because this is a very important election, and I appreciate the fact that you're getting to know the candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Jessica?
I'm Jess Goya. I've lived in North Kansas City for 5 years. It was figuring out that this is where we wanted to live, I think, was one of the most important reasons that I ran. It's just the sense of community that we have. As soon as we moved in, we had neighbors knocking on the door, trying to get to know us, learning about us, hanging out with my daughter, very old school, knock on the door, hey, can Ava come out and play? And honestly, I think it's one of the best places that you can live and raise a family. And for me, getting out there, meeting the community, talking to members of the community, hearing, all of the things that they love and some of the things that they would like to see done differently here in North Kansas City, is sort of what pushed me to run. I want to make sure that everybody is being heard and accounted for. I know that was a big thing that a lot of people brought up, was a sort of lacking in communication. So for me, that's like my main goal in running, is to be a voice of the people and to make sure that those platforms of communication exist. But that's who I am.
Thank you, Jessica. Rita?
Hi, I'm Rita Pierce, former city council member, running for the 3rd time, hopefully winning this time. I've lived in Northtown for 10 years. I run Northland Assistance Center. I know you guys have seen my name out there a lot because we've been doing some amazing things in regard to homeless population. The reason that I'm running is for many of the reasons that all of you are running. I love this city. I came here 15 years ago running the organization I have the honor of running now. I've lived in Ward 1 for the 10 years I've lived here, both on Fayette and on Erie. I'm an anomaly in that I actually am a renter. My husband and I rent. My background is I have an undergrad and a master's degree in criminal justice. I went back to school when I was quite old, got my undergrad at 40, and then my master's degree. I've been an adjunct professor in the criminal justice department for 15 years. Executive director of Northland Assistance Center for 15 years. I've been a property manager. I worked in the restaurant and bar industry. I'm older, obviously, than some of the other candidates. So by virtue of just being older, I've been able to have a lot more experiences. This city is really coming into a really interesting place. We're going to have a new mayor. We're going to eventually have a new city manager because Eric is retiring. It's a very exciting time. I have a lot invested in this community between working with my agency and living here. I look forward to representing you again, and I'm just very excited about this opportunity. So thank you. And Mindy, thanks for putting this thing together for us.
You're welcome. And thank you, Rita. Those are the candidates that were able to attend this evening from Ward 1. And we have one candidate from Ward 3 that is running unopposed in this election. But I still feel it's very important for us to hear Adam's position on all of the questions as well, because we still have to vote for him. So, Adam, your introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Mindy. Yeah, you do still have to vote. As you mentioned before, voting is in local elections is the most important thing you could do. And Rita, you forgot to mention that your kids own the best barbecue in Kansas City, which is Slaps Barbecue. I am Adam Roberts. I have lived on and off in North Kansas City for the last 12 years, initially as a renter and now as a homeowner for almost 5 years now. Of course, most of you probably know me as the owner-operator at Screenland Armored Theater. I've been running the movie theater since 2012. Prior to that, I grew up in the Northland. I grew up mostly in the Parkville area, but I was well acquainted with North Kansas City, and I'm thankful to be part of the big changes we've seen over the last decade. 2012 is when we took over. There was not a lot of local businesses other than industrial ones in the area. So it was good to be part of the ever-growing entertainment, retail, and food and beverage businesses that have prospered over the last decade. Of course, I'm in Ward 3, only candidate running. I'm 34. I have 2 dogs and a girlfriend. And I'm a business guy first and foremost. I've owned a number of different businesses. But outside of that, I kind of love everything. I'm a big movie guy, but I also love sports. I love being active, and you'll probably see me walking one of the dogs or running around the neighborhood or biking or all sorts of stuff. Because this is my home. This is what I do, and this is supporting local businesses and my community is the most important thing to me. Over the last year or so, I think it's become evident for a lot of us that politics are a heavy part of our life and are incredibly important. So being as educated as possible and listen to as many different voices as you can to be a representative is the most important thing a city council member can do, because you are a member of the community. You are there to support not just your ward, but your entire community, and listen and really try to let everybody's voice be heard and be the microphone for the people who are unable to speak their minds. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Adam. Now, as we get into the questions that have been submitted through the poll on the North Kansas City Neighbors Facebook page, as well as just community feedback, I do want to kind of go over the ground rules. We kind of went over it a little bit before we went live. The first thing that I want to remind everybody is that we are all neighbors here. When the election's over and we have the new mayor and the new council that represent us, we will still be neighbors. We will still see each other out walking the dog, playing with the kids about town, and just want to remind all of the viewers out there that that's what we want to embody, because North Kansas City, we are not Kansas City with, 500,000 people. We are about 4,800 people that live in North Kansas City right now, and we will run into each other. This is not a debate. There will be an opportunity for debate later if candidates desire and agree. We will start off in alphabetical order, and I'm tasking the candidates with, because we're going to rotate who gets to start each question, of just reminding me if I get out of order. One That is my computer yelling at me, telling me that I need to plug in. So pardon me 1 second. Yeah, that should work. Yay. Okay. And then if there is time, if you would like to submit a question via Facebook for us to ask the candidates, we will be asking for those as we round out the last half of the interview. With that in mind, we're going to get to our first question, and Wes will be our first candidate to answer. How will you get residents involved in decision making?
That's a great question. That's one of the reasons why I'm actually running for city council, is to address that specific question. Because as a resident, well, I've owned a home here since 2007, so I have been here a long time, and I own 2 homes here. I'm also a landlord. I own my first home, and then I just moved over here on Gentry. So I actually lived in Adam Roberts Ward for 12 years, and I have, as a resident, and I think a lot of residents can relate to this, I've never felt like I had involvement in our local government. There have been times where I have reached out to my local city council people regarding certain issues, and they're oftentimes I've either felt ignored, or if my opinion didn't fit their agenda, then they just explain to you what their agenda is, and you don't fit into their agenda. So I'm trying to reverse engineer what it is to be a represent the people of Ward 1, which is why I've been going door to door talking to people with a notebook and actually writing down their concerns. And I would like to, as you guys probably know, I like shooting videos. So before a city council meeting, I would like to shoot a video, put it out on Facebook, YouTube, different platforms, and just tell people, here's what's coming up in our next city council meeting. Let me know how you feel about these issues. And then after the meeting, I can do a follow-up video and say, here's what just transpired. How do you feel about this? And that's one of the suggestions I have. Another thing I suggest is, I think a lot of people want to have input anonymously. And so I would suggest putting an anonymous comment box outside somewhere, maybe even outside my house, to where if you have an issue, but you don't want to put your name on it, or you don't want to call or text me or what have you, you can drop a comment in the box. Because there are issues. I can relate to this. Sometimes there are issues that you want to speak out about, but you don't want to do so publicly. You don't want to be attacked, things of that nature. So that's it.
Thank you, Wes. Jessica, how will you get residents involved in the decision making?
So for me, I think communication is foundational to all relationships, especially working relationships. And I think in the past, we have sort of dropped the ball on this. I know for me, it kind of started when we started a small community project, and we were out at Mackin, sitting out there talking to members of the community, recording interviews with them, hearing their thoughts about the city. And one that we hit often was that the communication wasn't quite where it should be, that people didn't feel fully informed prior to things happening, rather partially informed after the fact, which I think was very problematic to people. I know Wes just mentioned reaching out to people, emailing city council members and not receiving responses. I heard some of that from people. And that pushed me to create the Equity and Inclusion Committee, whose one of their overarching goals is being a bridge between the community and the city. And I just kind of want to keep doubling down on that. For me, in order to have a thriving city, we need a good, strong relationship between the city and the people. And for me, it's on the city to create those channels of communication to make sure that they're effective. I noticed I went to the Facebook page. There's no points of asking questions or trying to engage people. It's more, here's a little bit of info. And for me, it's about making sure that we're doing all of those things effectively. We're reaching people in many different ways. We're making all of the information known throughout every step of every process, and making sure that people can comment and have feedback and feel included in the decisions that are made in their city.
Thank you, Jessica. Rita, how will you get residents involved in decision making?
When I was on the city council, I responded to every single email that was sent to me. I CC'd the appropriate parties. I got them in touch with the individuals that they needed to get in touch with, even off the city council. And I'm not going to go into this. You can just look at my little blog a couple of Fridays ago. I even did that when not on the city council because people recognize me and know that I know people. I come from a different perspective. Obviously, I'm older. Not every single person is on Facebook. Not every single person is socially savvy. So I've really given a lot of thought to this. And one of the things, and I'm not saying this is doable, but one of the things I thought about is everybody gets a water bill. Everybody gets a water bill in Norristown. So if there's some major sort of thing coming up, maybe we can incorporate that. I've had people reach out to me very recently saying, my phone. There's people who actually use phones, people who actually don't go on Facebook or other social media, and we have to reach out to them. Another thing that I had thought about is that in our ward, there are a number of apartment complexes, and I've gotten to know a number of the managers of those complexes because of the COVID funds that my agency was privy to. And why don't we leave flyers in the lobbies of these places talking about this? Why don't we use our library and put like a little kiosk? This is what's going on. Why don't we use Parks and Rec when we can all actually get together? Like make a little space that says, here's what's going on in Norristown. Why don't we use the YMCA? I mean, we have Parks and Rec, we have the YMCA. We have these opportunities where we can reach out to people who don't necessarily do the social media. And furthermore, a lot of the people who live in the city, particularly in our ward, they're apartment dwellers and they're transient people. When I first came to the metro area, I moved once a month. I moved here when I moved in the metro area when I was 25. I literally moved every May because I was single and looking to find some new, cooler place to live and was not invested. So we have to also pay attention that there are some people who aren't invested just because they're really, really busy raising their kids and trying to work. They don't have time to do committees, but there are ways to reach out to them that I don't think we have. And I agree with both of the other candidates in my ward that, social media doesn't do it. I think I might be able to bring a perspective where it does work. I will say this really quickly, that I also campaigned. The way I campaigned was not door to door. I left a flyer in everybody's door with a bag of candy. I swear, if you ever want anything done in North Kansas City and get their attention, drop something on everybody's door with a bag of candy because they will respond to that. I think we need to look at other channels besides social media. Social media is great. Doesn't apply to everybody in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Adam, how will you get residents involved in decision making?
Well, first, I'll agree with everybody on here. So having had a business here and having had to deal with a lot of different community relations and regulations and ordinances over the last decade, I will say that many council people have let us down as citizens. And as a business owner, it was shocking to see how few people would respond to you. When you're sitting, and it would just be, I'm not going to hit one ward, I'm going to hit everybody because it's the chance of even getting a single response, even today, is awful, and that's not great. So I think fixing that is a big part of this, is being somebody who wants to be responsible, who can answer an email, right? And you don't have to answer with 6 paragraphs. You can answer with okay, or call me, or let's get this done, or let's figure this out, right? Or direct me to the right position. That's a lot of things with city council, is finding the right person it needs to go to and being that kind of middleman to discern, all the stuff that we're all worried about. And I think the big issue is, by and large, a lot of people don't understand who's doing what and how it's supposed to be done. So you get people that are going to reach out to council people confused or assuming that you could change a lot of things that you might not be able to change. So I think there's going to be a level of education we need to get to the community of, here's what the reality of being a city council person is. Here's what we can do. And here's also what all the city administrators and full-time employees can do. Yeah. And you know, for me, it's continuing the education of how we can, as a community, all understand who does what and how they do it. And then for me, it's taking all aspects, right? Social media is great, but we're right, not everybody uses it. So we need to find easier outlets. We have a public library that is a great asset for everybody. That could be an easy resource for somebody to, like Wes said, have a Dropbox, whether you want to do it at City Hall or a public place like the library. You also have the ability to do, you know, questionnaires that are accessible there. You know, COVID's been weird and hard for a lot of people, but having these easy to access public forums, whether it's pen and paper or town halls where people can learn things before the fact, because we do get these letters in the mail and it's like, here's what we already did. And that can be very problematic for a lot of people who are very concerned that their voice wasn't allowed to be heard because they didn't know the issues were even present. So I think giving all those opportunities, educating the whole community about who does what and who you should reach out to. And that's going to fix a lot of issues for a lot of people, make people's jobs easier, and hopefully make the community a better place.
Thank you, Adam. So we're going to start the next question with Jessica. What do you think are priorities for North Kansas City? And combined with that, and I'll give you a little bit of extra time on this question because it's a two-parter. So what do you consider are priorities for North Kansas City? And where do you see North Kansas City when you think about it in 20 years? What does that look like?
I think we'll go back to the original question. Transparent communication is a priority. I think it's something that we need to work on and establish and get very good at, basically having a relationship with the community. And that will affect everything that we do going forward, whether it's developments or just things happening in the city. So one, transparent and open communication is, I think, the underlying priority. And then we get into things like community development. For me, I just see every time we have a new development, people are upset about it. And yes, it's partially because they weren't included in the decision, but a lot of it is because there's so many questions. Is it going to benefit us in the city? You know, what is it going to fit? Is some new structure going to fit the style of our city and the feel of our city? Is it kind of going to undermine the relationships, the community that we have, or is it going to add to it? For me, I think getting everybody on not necessarily the same page, that will never happen. We're not going to have everybody agree on everything, but having everybody working together is priority to me. Like, I think when it comes to city council, it's important to remember that while we all may have opposing views and opinions, we have the same underlying goal, which is to have a thriving city. So even when we disagree, it needs to be productive disagreement. We need to be able to disagree in productive ways where we're, you know, not just throwing out problems, but solutions, and then everybody's discussing. So for me, it's about, you know, hearing new ideas, new ways to do things. Those are priorities. I know recently the grocery store was a big thing, and I think there's just alternatives we've never considered: cooperative grocery stores, farmers markets, things like that. As far as 20 years, I just want to see us thriving. I want to see us doubling down on our small town feel. I think we don't really want to move away from that because that is our sense of community. I want to see us really investing in our small businesses and in the people who live in the city. I want it to be, you know, a great destination and a great place to live, with things like Iron District and the Rabbit Hole coming. Like, people are just going to want to come here. I want to see the streetcar. In 20 years, I hope we are really right now making those roads and making it the great place to be in 20 years that it should be. But
Thank you, Jessica. Rita, same question to you. What do you consider as priorities for North Kansas City, and where do you see us in 20 years?
I see priorities as small businesses. I've been very vocal about the fact that when One North came in, they promised the sun, the moon, the stars, and they have yet to deliver. And what few things that they have brought, whether publicly or not publicly, would have kind of clashed with local business. We keep hearing these things about the grocery store, and I have said this on social media there is a spot for a grocery store that's already been slated and approved in One North. They have yet to come through. They were going to come through with a golf thing. They were going to come through with this. They were come through with that. All things that would not compete with small businesses. None of those things have come through. I think there's room for development there. But if I'm on the city council, they're not going to be in competition with our local businesses. I think local businesses are going to be what really drives our community. I'm really excited. I've had, weirdly, oddly enough, in the last few weeks, I've had an opportunity to go to a whole bunch of these kinds of places, and I really enjoy going to them. Another thing I think is really important to understand that the projects that are going on now, because I was on the city council before, and I had to learn these things. I came on, I was a novice. These things have been in play for a long time. So you can't just go in and say, I don't like it, it's going to go away. What I see for the future is that we do have more involvement, that we do. And I'm not saying there wasn't involvement before. If people actually look back, there were community meetings. There were things that went on. People did not attend them. What we need to do is make sure people do attend these meetings. They do have an input into what's going on so that we do have a future. I love the streetcar idea. I know that's been thrown out. That's not the way, frankly, that the streetcar is moving. I've already done the research on it. I do not oppose looking into it, but I don't think it's a viable thing for this point in time. We need to look at things that are going to happen in the next 5 years, not 20, 30 years down the line, that will continue to grow our city. And I think the way we're going to grow our city is to really bring in more small businesses and entertainment venues in this town.
Thank you, Rita. Adam, same question to you. What are the priorities that you think North Kansas City needs to be considering, and what do you see as the vision for North Kansas City in 20 years?
I think a lot of the programs that we're already building towards are going to set, the pavement for where we're going to be in 20 years. And I think a lot of them are very exciting and first of their kind in Kansas City. What we all mention here are the love of the community, the love of the small town feel. And I think it's important to protect that, but also build on that into the future. And I think things like Complete Streets do that and are very integral to being a forward-thinking, both in greenways and new transportation, but also in new aesthetics. And it's very hard and it's incredibly difficult for a lot of communities to do what we've already done. And we're just getting started with the Complete Streets. And part of that Complete Streets, I think, is working long-term to get the streetcar up here. I think that's an incredibly important thing. But that all ties into our community and it all ties into small businesses growing here. We often hear there's no retail here, no grocery store. Well, all those kind of relate to if we have the streetcar up here, we're going to tie in the River Market and the downtown. Then they're going to come up here and that's going to be the grocery store. All these things are going to tie into each other. So it is very important to continue to build these pillars so that we have the ability and the infrastructure for the future for big things like a grocery store. But we cannot forget the small businesses. As a small business owner, there's always the threat of the big guy coming in behind you and being the big shiny toy that everyone wants to see. And so it's dramatically the most important thing we could do, right, is to protect small businesses and for when the city can prevent somebody like a Walmart or a big movie theater chain that would come in and stop the small guy, because that's exactly what they do, even if it's not their actual intention. So small businesses continuing to build out our great new infrastructures to have the best streets, the most walkable and green streets possible, so that here in 20 years we have not only the coolest parks, but the most accessible streets, both on foot, on wheels, and in a car, to enjoy our entire city and community of small, great businesses.
Thank you, Adam. Wes, we will end this question with you.
How long do I get?
We're running at about 3.5 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to rapid fire here because I got a lot of data put out here. So it's a big question. This is important. So the three priorities that I have, one we've already touched on, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, which is communication and transparency. Rita mentioned town halls. Not everyone attends town halls. Not everyone has time. There's people like myself that work their butts off. I do a lot of extracurricular activities. I have Cub Scout meetings. I have stuff going on, taking care of my kids, having dinner. there's people can't attend town halls, a lot of folks. So we need multiple modes of communication. We need other ways that people can put input into the community. So that's my number one priority. Number two, I'm a housing expert. I've been selling houses in this area since 2004. I'm not only focused on increasing home ownership in our area, because right now we're at about 80% renters, which is great. I love renters, but I'd like to see more homeowners. I have a list right now of 16 people that want to buy a house here in North Kansas City that I cannot find a house for. Secondly, I want to take care of our tenants. We need tenants' rights in our community. We have a lot of older properties, especially in my ward. We have the duplexes on 26th, 7th, and 8th. And then we have some rental units on Gentry, Fayette, and Erie. We need to make sure that our rental inspections are very robust. And there are loopholes right now that I don't have time to get into, but landlords can skate past getting rental inspections right now. It's very easy to avoid getting inspections. If you're a tenant with issues at your property and it's not being taken care of, they need a way to contact the city for the city to get involved to have their property taken care of. And then number three, I would like to see more family-oriented destinations and activities in our community. There's a lot of us that have kids. I don't drink anymore. I quit drinking. It seems like nowadays, I mean, I got nothing against breweries. Believe me, I've spent thousands of dollars at our breweries here. I've done my share of drinking. I'm over it. And I want to see more family-oriented activities. Adam touched on it a minute ago about the parks. I love our park. I spend a ton of time at Mackin Park and Dag Park, but I think we can really even up our game and make our parks a destination for people outside of North Kansas City to come here to spend time at our parks. We can do things that we've talked about, like the skate park. We can do an inclusive playground. And then if you want to talk about like big goals, like my 20-year goals, let's bring back an outdoor swimming pool. My family belongs to Old Pike, it's expensive, and a lot of people can't afford that. I would love a neighborhood swimming pool. The streetcar is huge. I do think we're going to have a streetcar, but it's not going to happen like in the next year or two, like in this city council's term. It's something that's a big goal. And in 20 years, I think 9 Highway is going to look completely different. Once we have a streetcar running down 9 Highway, I used to live in Boston, Massachusetts, and all of my apartments I lived in at that time, there was what they call the T, which is a streetcar, would be right outside my door. I spent 4 years of my adult life without a car. And so I would spend $27 a month for a subway pass, and I could take the T to class, to the store, to the airport, wherever I wanted to go. And I think that 9 Highway will be redeveloped with mixed use, where, like in Boston, on Commonwealth Avenue, where I lived, on the main floor, you're going to have a pizza shop and a real estate office and things like that. And then above that, you'll have housing. You'll have apartments. You'll have offices. I think 9 Highway is going to look completely different in 20 years. And if I still have time, the grocery store, guys, there's data. We're not getting a grocery store. People promising you a grocery store, they are lying to you. If you go to our master plan that's in current action, on page 21, it says that our current population supports a 17,000 square foot grocery store, and a real supermarket's 55,000 to 65,000 square feet. So our population is just not big enough. Even if you double our population, you go to page 61 of the master plan, says that full-scale supermarkets stores require a population of approximately 10,000 people within their trade area. So even if we double the population, we're not getting a grocery store. People promising you a grocery store are, they're lying to you. So sorry.
Thank you. Adam, you raised your hand. Do you have a question or?
No, I was just going to tag on to that. I think part of it, Wes, is looking outside of North Kansas City and the whole development that's happening in the River Market, the downtown area, and Avondale, and the surrounding areas. We're 4,500 plus strong right now, but they're not inclusive of all this stuff and considerations for the downtown lack of a real grocery store. So I do think that part of the plan needs to incorporate and probably needs to work with downtown and those amenities as well, because having lived downtown, I'm traveling. You would always travel 20 plus minutes away to get to a real grocery store. So
that's a larger discussion that we won't have time for this evening. Unfortunately, Rita, I'll give you 1 minute for rebuttal.
I wanted to give Jessica the credit for talking about the town hall meetings. Wes referred to me mentioning them. I'm not opposed to them, but Jessica was the one who is saying that town hall meetings would be a really great idea.
Thank
So
you for
I
that
just
point of
wanted to give you
clarification.
props, Jessica.
Thank you for that. These topics are all really important topics that we would love to be able to get in. And I think that this is indicative of the discussions that would happen with the candidates once they were seated on the city council. So great conversation here. Rita, will we go to the next question to you? Hold on. I'm going blind, so I must adjust my vision. Do you support the Complete Streets plan?
Oh, I love this question because when this plan came about, well, this plan was way before my time on the city council. And this is one of the things I kind of touched on before. Everybody got upset when it was completed, but all the people who supported it, a number of those people were on the city council already who unanimously supported it. There were numerous meetings in regard to whether or not it should happen, which is why we need to, let me just backtrack for a minute. We are now more involved. I don't think that any plan that comes into our city, I hope, won't have the input that it should. But I don't know I wasn't part of it. I am not opposed to the Complete Street Plan at all. And as a matter of fact, with Council Member Smith, he and I put our heads together when the whole idea was to blow up the plan at one of the city council meetings and said, well, this is not a good idea. Let's put it on pause so that we might at least see what it looks like and then make the modifications. And when I was on the city council, I not only suggested, endorsed the modifications that have already been approved by this current city council, and I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to bicycles at all. Frankly, I think that 18th Street would have been a better idea to make a whole bike lane thing, but it's here. It's not going away. I don't think people realize that a lot of the money that supported it was through grants. I write grants, so I get that if you don't follow through on your grant, you're never going to get money for other kinds of things, which I really do believe Sarah's explained extraordinarily well. I hate the little white ugly things. They're going to go away. They made some other sorts of modifications. Will I say that I feel it's completely safe? No, because when I get off the road, this little section between the new Quick Trip and heading to the post office, it's like, it's like one of those kinds of things where it's like, I'm going to dare you to drive in front of me. Even people who I know living and working here recognize cars that kind of like jut in front of you. I am not against that plan at all. I think we're making modifications on it. I think additional modifications will be made. I was just shocked when so many people went, oh my gosh, we didn't know this was happening. We didn't know it was happening. I didn't know. I didn't pay attention. I fully admit it. But people had an opportunity to weigh in on it. So, no, I'm not against it at all. Not at all. I think modifications have been made. I've suggested them, voted for them, and I assume there'll be more modifications. I think it's going to be okay. Things take time. We don't know what plants look like. We don't know what curbs look like until it's done. And I think the city is moving forward in a really great way. And finally, I just love the crosswalks. The crosswalks are cool. I wish they had those little multicolored crosswalks at every crosswalk, at every intersection. I look forward to what will eventually be done by the CVS. That whole little section there is going to look really cool. It's been already approved for what it's going to look like. No, I'm not all opposed to it. I'm all about modifying when need be.
Okay. Because we do need to wrap up here right around 8 o'clock, I'm going to try and keep everybody to about 2.5 minutes for an answer. Adam, what's your position on Complete Streets?
Complete Streets rule. I love them. My dogs love them. My bikes love them. My rollerblades love them. My feet love them. Everything about them is great. It's always gonna be a work in progress, and that's any good project, right? Anything that's working is always gonna be worth adjusting and making better and finding improvements. So, we're a couple years in now, and I see more and more people utilizing them. And quite honestly, it was a lifesaver for a lot of us during the pandemic. It gave us a reason to go out to explore the city, to safely walk our dogs or our families around and feel comfortable doing so. And then, now that we can gather a little bit more, you're gonna see more and more of that, people walking to the parks and things like that. But as a cyclist, I absolutely love it. I love going all over the whole city. Even 12 years ago, we had the lanes down Swift, and even that was cool. And now we have lanes all through our city, and eventually they're going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And it's a really cool thing. I mean, it makes us feel like we're in a totally different town, and that's the coolest thing about North Kansas City. When people come here for the very first time, and I'm like, you want to go ride bikes down our city? And they're riding through there. They're like, what is this part of town? How this doesn't feel like Kansas City, and that's because it's very special. We have a very flat area. We have all these cool, whether they're protected or decorative, whatever bike lanes. We have all sorts of different vibes, I guess, happening. And so continuing to make progress on it, continuing to grow it and make adjustments so that it's in 20 years that it is a destination in and of itself. That people want to come here to ride bikes, for a couple miles in our city, and that all leads to a cool accessibility into downtown. It's nothing like riding your bike from here to the farmer's market and picking up some fresh produce and riding it back across the bridge. It is really cool. And I'm done with my time.
Thank you, Adam. Wes, what is your position on the Complete Streets plan?
So I am not I'm not gung ho about complete streets, and I also don't hate complete streets. So what I'm actually doing is being kind of a mediator in the middle of knocking on doors, talking to people. There are people that absolutely hate the thing. There's people that absolutely love everything about it. And so I've spent a lot of time talking to people. If you talk to people that really hate it and you ask enough questions, you can drill down into very specific issues that they have that can be resolved. And as the previous people mentioned, there are modifications being done. And I think the more we listen to people, which goes back to communications and the issues that they have, and the more we address specific issues with complete streets, then I think a lot of the negativity will be removed and we can all move forward peacefully. Specific issues, for example, there's people on Fayette Street that absolutely hate the stoplight at Fayette and Armour. Mindy, you might be aware of that. Your business is located right there. There's also been an impact on traffic there's certain streets in my ward that traffic has increased massively because there's cars avoiding Armour Road and cutting through residential areas. And a lot of us have kids, have cats, things of that nature. And, there's people that are wanting speed bumps installed in certain places. There's people wanting four-way stop signs installed in certain places just to slow people down a little bit. There's people that want pedestrian crossings added in places. You ever drive somewhere and you can push a button and a light, it's like a stoplight for pedestrians. There's people that want that installed in places on Armour Road. One specific place mentioned to me by residents in my ward was Clay Street, by CVS, in between CVS and Dollar General. That's a really dangerous pedestrian crossing area. So I think we're going to continue to improve on complete streets. It's going to get better and better. I'd like to see more connectivity between North Kansas City, the city market, which I spend a lot of time in. And there's I have a guy on my street that works at the downtown airport, and it's really tough to cross from North Kansas City down there, through Harlem, through that area. I'd like to see more connectivity, and I think that will transpire once we expand on the project. So I'm not a big fan of it. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I think we can continue to improve on it. And I want to use my ears and listen to the residents in my ward and just make it as great as possible so that we're all happy. Thanks.
Thanks, Wes. Jessica, what is your view on complete streets?
Personally, I like it. I will say, as a mother, riding around on our bikes is one of the best things to do on a nice day. Also, as a person with a disability, the added comfort that it's a little safer, people are aware that we're out there, makes it way easier for me. But I will say that there was a breakdown of communication. I know Rita said something along the lines of she wasn't paying attention. I don't think that's on you, Rita. You weren't on city council at the time that you were discussing it. I think that is a responsibility of the city to make sure that that information is getting out there to people. And I know when it came to complete streets, there was a lot of different opinions. But I think we find ourselves in this position where we are oftentimes hearing the active members of our community repeatedly. And those are the opinions that we're drawing from because we're not going outside of that. So just because we have a handful of people who are constantly engaged and listening and, you know, sitting in on city council meetings, et cetera, that's not necessarily the opinion of the majority. And I think, like, again, everything kind of comes back to this communication issue. But as far as complete streets, I like it. I'm glad we're going to continue working on it. We're in it. So love it or hate it, we're doing it. We need to get it done. And honestly, I think it's just going to add to our city. It makes it more connected. It makes it easier to navigate. I know Wes has mentioned that people hate driving down Armour. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't mind. It takes me, I can tell you, we have woken up at 10:20 on a weekend and getting ready. It took us like 5 minutes to get to McDonald's in time to get breakfast. It's not congested to me. It doesn't seem to necessarily affect the flow of traffic in the ways that I have heard when you just follow the speed, like drive as you are supposed to. And I think it's fine. And also with all of the foot traffic, I think it's important. I've seen my little neighbors crossing these streets, you know, their families, obviously, but with small humans who are, you know, not necessarily the easiest to get from point A to point B. And to me, just having that added safety in a small community is vital. I think it makes our city a better place to live for families, for everyone. Honestly, I know Wes mentioned something recently about what do you call them, go-karts. And while I'm not super, honestly, like, people jumped on that so quickly. And the reality is, one, other cities have done it, for the record. Other cities have allowed go-karts and bike lanes. I don't think we should ever do that. But I don't see what the problem with having go-karts on residential streets is, because they go no faster than 20 miles an hour, which is less than we're supposed to be driving on residential streets. But to me, sorry, that was kind of off the point, but I think it kind of ties in with accessibility and getting around the city. I think as we grow and develop these ideas and get further with the Complete Streets project, like, it's going to be something that we all love. But as Wes mentioned, it's going to take hearing people, what they want to see, those little things that he was talking about are big things that people really don't like about it. And then we are going to have to come up with solutions to these problems. But I don't think it's undoable. As he mentioned, like, these are problems that we can fix. So anyways, love Complete Streets.
Great. So I'm going to combine two questions. One is from the polls that we did, and another is one that came in on the Facebook feed. And they're really very, very much aligned and related. So I'm going to combine them. How do you support outdoor recreation areas for things like volleyball, outdoor and outdoor pools, skate park, ice rink, inclusive playgrounds, family-friendly activities? How do you propose to bring more family-friendly activities to North Kansas City? Because we do a lot of talking about business development, but we haven't talked a lot about community development for the residents. So we are going to start with Adam on this question.
Well, I mean, we have great parks already, right? And our city is still relatively, even though we've been here a long time, the version of what we're creating right now has not been here for a long time. We're in the middle of a mega renaissance in terms of what businesses are looking to come to North Kansas City. Now, when we want to create a public pool and things like that, that all comes down to where do we put it, right? We are a very small in space city. We don't have a lot of extra land. We don't have a lot of property. So where are we going to put a pool? You know, I would love to see a basketball courts. I would love to see a skate park. I'd love to see all this stuff, but where can we put it? And, you know, we might look down to our industrial areas, but then it comes into do we want the city to be purchasing more properties? And that's always an issue. Like, do we spend tax dollars on more properties? And that's you know, certainly a conversation, but it's also a conversation. I think most of those things you mentioned are going to involve the Parks Department. So I think it's not just the city council that's going to be involved in this, it's the Parks Department. But certainly, you know, with things like Rabbit Hole opening, we're going to have larger destinations for families. And that's going to find more opportunities for new businesses that are like, okay, this is really unique and cool. Just like when Chicken and Pickle opened here, and when the brewery is open, and when the theater opened, right? People see, okay, there's destinations there. Now I can attach to that, right? I can add on to it, and I can put my 2 cents in. So I think we're going to get a lot of these newer businesses. You know, things like ROKC already do exist, and are great for families and unique activities. So I think we're going to get businesses that might fill in a lot of these holes. But on a city level, we're going to have the tough conversation. Do we buy more properties? Do we try to extend North Kansas City's proper lines as a city and try to incorporate things in other areas that aren't our proper area right now? Maybe. But those are a lot of varying conversations that involve both private businesses, the Parks Department, and us as a city and what we want to spend. But yes, I would love to have a public pool here. I would love to have a skate park. I'd love to have a place to play basketball that isn't in a church parking lot. There's all these different things that we could be doing here, but it's going to have many different pieces to kind of put together. So hopefully we can do it, but that's another 20-year project. We're not going to see these tomorrow, unfortunately. We're not going to see them next summer, but in maybe 5 years, we might see a couple of those be able to be checked off this list, and hopefully have more things for us all to enjoy.
Thank you, Adam. Wes, the question comes back around to you. Do you need me to repeat it?
Nope, this is my favorite question. I'm so glad you asked. I want more family-oriented, healthy lifestyle options here in North Kansas City. I'm all about family-oriented stuff. I'm very outdoorsy. Mentioned previously, I'm into Cub Scouting. And I'm also been around here long enough that I remember when we had basketball and sand volleyball at Backett Park. It used to exist. So people acting like we can't do that. We literally used to have it. We also used to have an outdoor swimming pool. So these things are all feasible options. They're all on the table, in my opinion. Let's do it. Furthermore, some of the comments I've gotten from my residents, Dag Park gets crazy busy during the summer. There's people in my ward that want to see like a residents only time at Dag Park, maybe an hour before they open or an hour after they close. Maybe residents can get a little entry code, put a lock on the gate. Residents only time gets overcrowded. Furthermore, guys, North Kansas City owns the land Harrah's is on. Harrah's pays us rent. Have you been to Argosy Casino? Has a freaking awesome park there. It's awesome. They utilize their riverfront. Parkville utilizes their riverfront. Riverside does. If you go down Shoto Bridge across the river, there's a boat ramp and you can fish there at the riverfront. Why don't we use our riverfront? If you want to think big, like I want riverfront options down by Harrah's. I would like to see trails, hiking trails, biking trails. We have the sky's the limit. I want to draw people to North Kansas City from all other parts of the city. And so that you can take your family to the park, have a great time, and then go to Adam Roberts movie theater, buy some popcorn, take the kids out to eat, go down to Paul and Jack's, buy some chicken fingers and a buffalo chicken wrap. And we can bring people into our city to spend money in other ways than breweries and bands and alcohol stuff. I want to see more family-oriented activities. And thank you for the question. Great question.
Thank you, Wes. Loaded question that this is. Jessica?
Also, I think one of my favorite questions. I definitely think the inclusive playground is vital. I don't really know if that's much of a discussion. It's just something we need to do. I'm not going to lie. It's about accessibility. It's about being inclusive. It's the fact that not every child is capable of utilizing the things that we have now. That's just accessibility. That's kind of a no-brainer to me. The skate park, I am 100% on board with the skate park, have been for a couple of years, have had many discussions with city council members, probably annoyed the crap out of some of our existing city council members with this idea, this concept. I've been told many different things on it, but to me, it sounds doable. I think it's also kind of a safety concern, given the number of young adults and children that I know personally in the city of North Kansas City who skate around. I've had kids fall off their skateboards into the street, not my kid, but when we were driving to Quick Trip, things like that, like those things scare me. I know where some of our older adult skateboarders go around the city and skate, and not always the safest options either. Clearly, we have a huge little community of skaters, and I think having a place for them to go is vital. I think that would be super awesome. I think it would be such a benefit to our community. Beyond that, I just think, so we have the parks, we have more activities, football, basketball, I think would be awesome. But as far as space, I don't necessarily know if it's as big of an issue as we're making it if we get creative. I think we have actually quite a bit of unused space or underutilized space. I think Wes kind of hit the nail on the head there when he was talking about, up by Harrah's. Like we are not as out of space as we like to think we are. I think we're just out of creativity. We need to get a little more creative about how we're doing things, where we're putting things. Like even with the skate park, where are we going to put a skate park? We already have a wheel park. There's a ton of green space there, enough to have two mini skate parks in that green space. So we could just use one of those and add it on. Like as Wes mentioned, some trails. I think sometimes we make things a little harder than they need to be. And I don't know that these issues are. These are things that would actively benefit our community. And they kind of seem like no-brainers to me. People have been, when it comes to the skateboard issue, you can go to Google and look it up. There have been like forum discussions online about skate parks in North Kansas City for almost 10 years. 10 years. That's ridiculous. People have been saying, I want a skate park here for 10 years. We used to have one. First, they wanted it to be nicer. They wanted it to be fixed up. Then they just got rid of it completely. And then people are just wanting it back. So I don't know. I think we make things more difficult than they need to be. I'm super on board with all of these ideas. And I just think they would make our city a much better place to live.
Thank you, Jessica. Rita, we will wrap this question up with you.
Okay, I agree with all of these comments. In regard to the ADA playgrounds, I have done some research into it. It's really easy to say we need all these things. As a city council person, I think it's important to actually look at what's been done and what can be done and how it can be financed. I understand that Parks and Rec operates separately from the city. I did not understand that when I first came on board, but I do now. There are many, many grant opportunities for ADA compliant playgrounds. Found many online today. Well, I've actually looked at them before when Wes, actually giving you credit, suggested that. So that is not an impossibility. And it's even more a possibility because Ryan Associates, who do playground equipments in North Kansas City and is a North Kansas City company, who I called today to see if they did that, could probably make that happen under a grant. In regard to skateboards, Liberty, Missouri, it took them 8 years to get to the almost point where I think they're finally going to have skateboard parks. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. I'm all about collaboration. Let's look at these people. Let's find out what work they did for 8 years that might move this thing forward. I think that's a great idea. In regard to I would love to have trails and things all along the river. However, these properties are owned by other people. So it's easy to say it's a good thing. I don't know, and I'm not smart enough. I'm not a realty person. I don't own property. I don't have any investment kinds of things. But I'm thinking if these properties are owned by other humans, the city's going to have to negotiate and figure out how these things happen. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that's a long-term goal that I'm really, really would be excited about. I think that the ADA parks are not such a long-term goal because I know there are grant opportunities for them and we could do that locally. The skateboard park, I think if we decide to do that, not we as city council, because that's a Parks and Rec job, that they could contact Liberty. However, as a city council member, because we often kick in money for things that benefit our city through Parks and Rec or the library or the YMCA, I would be all in favor of putting money into those issues. It's like I said, these are all things I really, really believe in, but you have to be really practical and you really have to do your homework. And I think the ADA parks could be done by private funding and through grants. I think the skateboard idea is a fabulous idea, but we need to work with Liberty's Parks and Rec, who have spent 8 years getting to that point, and maybe partner with other organizations. And we need to be really mindful of, you just can't take somebody else's property and put a path through it as much as I would like to do that. I love the parks in Riverside and I like walking along the river. But again, that would be another opportunity to figure out with the city how that happened.
Thank you, Rita. I'm holding my tongue because there's so many things that I want to say. Great points from all of you. I think for the general public out there, one piece of this pie is that Variety Children's Charities is very involved in putting in the inclusive playgrounds throughout the metro, and they have expressed a desire to help North Kansas City in the past. So some of these things that we're talking about, yes, they fall under Parks and Rec, but they also fall under the city to provide direction that this is where we as residents want to go. And I think it's important that that the residents be heard. And one of the things that has been said over and over again is, how do we have more things for families to do that live here without having additional cost? And I think that's a huge motivator. It's one of the reasons I lived here when my children were young. And it's one of the reasons that we moved back and have the ninth grandbaby on the way. So thank you all for addressing that, because let's face it, if we do things to take care of the young families, we're going to simultaneously be doing something to take care of our retirees and everyone in between. I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to take about 3 to 4 minutes to kind of wrap up anything that wasn't covered in one of the questions that you feel important to tell people about you as a candidate. We will have opportunity for individual interviews next week where you can get really in depth into your position on lots of topics. And I'll send out an email to each of you about that probably tomorrow. So we will start. We've made the circle to everybody. So we'll start back at the beginning with Wes, with your closing statement about who you are, what you want, and what your position is, and how you can help North Kansas City if you're elected to council.
So I did not write a closing statement or anything. I'm just going to freestyle off the top of my head. Real quick, though, getting back to I forgot to mention about the family-oriented activities. We have a lot of kids in our community that I know. I have 2 kids. It's super expensive raising kids. It's crazy expensive. Like if you join the zoo, you pay for a pool pass, Union Station. This stuff adds up crazy. And so something else I think we need to do as a community is look out for these families, these kids that we have I have a lot of friends that have, are single parents, and it's tough out there. There's a lot of kids that want to play sports and can't afford it. I think we need more, like Mindy just said, we need more free family-oriented activities for not only our residents, but like I coach baseball here at Mackin Park. I have kids on my team from Parkville, from the Northeast, that live off Berry Road, that live in Pleasant Valley. There are kids from all over the metro that come to North Kansas City to enjoy our parks. And I would like to see something put in place through Parks and Rec, where if you're a family with a kid that wants to play baseball or do an activity and you can't afford it because it's expensive, I think that we need to fund those people and allow them access and be more inclusive in that regard. My wrap up as to why I'm running, who I am, why you should vote for me. I am not a politician. My agenda is to represent the residents of Ward 1, period. That's it. I'm just trying to look out for my people. I want more people on city council like myself that do not have political agendas, that are just trying to do the right thing for our community. And in ending, I just want to say that North Kansas City is my forever home. I am not BSing you when I say that when I die, you will carry my ass out of my house that I'm in right now in Gentry. So I think I have a different perspective than a lot of other candidates in that I've been here wearing a Bill Cosby sweater at Pizza Hut in the 80s when it was cool. Pizza Hut used to be like a nice restaurant, and I'd go there with my family and play Pac-Man. I'd go to NKC Pro Bowl, ride go-karts, play golf back before it was a dump. I remember sitting at Paul and Jack's when they didn't have a band, drinking a beer at 10 p.m. and I was the only person in the bar because there was no nightlife just 10 years ago. And I've seen this community through the years change and expand and morph. And I'm excited about our future and I want to be part of it. And I just want to make sure that as we grow and develop, it's done the right way. And I want to represent you, the people of Ward 1. So I need you to vote April 6th. Thank you.
And Jessica, your final comments?
I won't take up too much time. I think we've said quite a bit tonight. Honestly, I am also not a politician, as Wes has mentioned. None of us really are. We're all community members. Suddenly being on city council doesn't make you, more intelligent than the rest of the community or more knowledgeable of what's going on. It is, gathering information, learning things that I love. But most importantly, I love this city. And, no, I did not grow up here and I haven't lived here my entire life, but I am one of those single moms Wes was talking about. So when it comes to finances, buying a home is probably one of the biggest financial decisions you're ever going to make. And choosing to settle down here in North Kansas City was not by accident. Obviously, nobody buys a home accidentally. It's because I love this city. And every year that I have spent here has made me love it even more. Our neighbors are basically like family at this point. And I just want to make sure that some of the things that have been overlooked aren't overlooked anymore. I want to make sure that the community has a voice, not just Ward 1. I don't care what ward you're in. If you have a question, a comment, or a concern, you can send it my way and I'll make sure it gets to the proper person or I answer it to the best of my ability. I think anybody who knows me in this community or who has worked with me in this community can attest to that. If you shoot me a question, I'm going to find you an answer or find you someone who can answer it. But mostly, I just want to make sure that this is the best community to grow up in for my daughter and for the kids in our neighborhood. I want to make sure that this is a community that is thriving. I want to double down on that feeling of community. So anyways, that's what I'm in it for.
And Rita, your final comments?
My comments are a couple of things. One, we've kind of neglected a little bit. Ward 1 and all the wards run north and south. So I think it's important as a city council member to keep in mind that you need to also keep the business owners in mind, even though they don't live here. You need to keep in mind your residents who live here. You need to keep in mind the age group, particularly in Ward 1 that live here, because they kind of range. I spoke to a woman who was 97 last night, who I cannot wait to when she comes to vote, because I asked her to shake my hand, who has lived here since she's 16. Her voice also needs to be heard. Obviously, families need to be heard. My family is grown. By the way, thank you, Adam, for giving the shout out to Slaps. I'll let the boys know you did that. My kids are all grown. My granddaughter doesn't live here, but I have worked here for 15 years. And I have intimately gotten to know through my work with the Northland Assistance Center, the needs and the wants and the disparity and the difficulties that particularly this year that people have dealt with. I think I'm in a unique position to understand that. I also think I'm in a unique position that I do recognize there are businesses and their ages from 97 or perhaps older to birth. And you need to take that into account. You can't just focus on one thing. And more importantly, having been a city council member, not a politician. I didn't run as a politician. I don't consider myself a politician. I do know how things work. And whether you like it or not, there is a system in order to make things happen. We can make things happen as city council people. We can direct staff as city council people. But when it comes to our community's concerns, there is a system. What I can say is that I did well, continue to do well, even though not on the city council, is to keep that line of communication going. If you send me an email and I send it to the city administrator, I'm going to CC you on every single step of the way. I cannot answer and make all of your, whatever your desires are happen, but you will know why they are or they are not happening. And once you give me that information and I connect you with the right people, then it's up to you. And that's how you build a community. You connect community with the people who can actually make a difference. And then you kind of step aside and let it happen. So that is why I think I would be the best candidate for this ward. I know this ward. I actually know the city. I know how the system works, whether I like it or not. I have rebelled against it, but just basically saying vote for me because I think I know what I'm doing.
Thank you, Rita. So those are your 3 of your 4 candidates for Ward 1. Jennifer was not able to participate this evening. So that's Wes Graves, Jess Loya, Rita Pierce, and Jennifer Martino, who is not with us tonight. Adam, you are with Ward 3, which is where I live. And jokingly, I said, since you were running, I didn't need to. And quite frankly, thank you for doing that. I love what I do, and I love that you're stepping into this role with the city council. So as your parting comments this evening, obviously you're unopposed in this race, but people still need to vote.
Yeah, well, shockingly, Mindy, I too here am not a politician. But the most important thing, I'm the only candidate running Ward 3 this year. That's kind of how it's been the last couple of years when I've been voting for the city council. So it is incredibly important for you to get out and vote, whether there's one candidate on it or not. There's also a mayoral race. So this is incredibly important for you to get out, to have your voice heard, and to make your mark on the card. So my closing remarks, I'm not a politician, but I am a small business owner. I'm one that was able to survive this last year, hellish year, in a business that has been just throttled by the pandemic and is going to continue to be throttled. But I've been able to pivot. I've kept all my employees employed, and I've continued to provide entertainment for people, not only in our community, but outside of our community, to bring people in to see our beautiful city. But it was my privilege to be able to have outdoor films this year, to see the neighbors walking down with their kids to watch, some of their favorite movies. That was terrific. That was one of the best things I could see happening. And in the insane landscape that was 2020, I think we all have this urgency and kind of need to have our voice heard. But for me, it was listening to my employees, listening to my closest friends and family members, and trying to be a better listener and to communicate with one another better. And all that I think goes into what I want to do as a candidate is to be the megaphone for all the people, not in my ward, not just people who live here, everybody, to be the megaphone, and to do the research for them if they have a wild idea, but they think it's great, to try to make it work and to hear them out, and then to speak it, let it be known. But outside of that, it's continuing to focus on our small businesses to make sure that when we're doing city developmental deals, that there is a consideration for affordable housing and everything going forward, to build out our complete street and to turn either around or down Armour Road. I don't know if it'll happen down Armour Road, but at least stopping there and turning around would be a beautiful sight. And as Wes pointed out, there's these terrific cities like Chicago or Boston that have these exact things. And he's 100% right. In 20 years, Burlington corridor is going to be incredible. So right now is the time to start building those blocks so that we have, a basketball court, the Parks and Recs, like he said, but that we protect our small businesses now more than ever. During coming out of the pandemic, we have all been struggling, and Minnie knows as well. She's a small business owner. It has been incredibly difficult to get to this point, to still have our lights on. But just the ability to do that means that I'm able to quickly pivot, to listen, to read and do the research, to make sure that my employees are still employed and have a job to look forward to at the end of every day. And that's how I'm going to work, for all the people of Ward 3, Ward 2, Ward 1, Ward 4. And I said them out of order because it doesn't matter, because I'm going to be a council person for all the city. And I look forward to serving, I guess, here in a few weeks. And I look forward to one of you being there. And if not, I'm certain that one of you will always be communicating with me, and I hope you will.
Thank you, Adam. Before we let everybody go, we are going to have the candidates from Ward 2 and 4 joining us here at about 8:30. Right here on the Facebook page. And then, as I promised Wes earlier, I will work on making sure that it's shareable for those that are not on Facebook or not on the North Kansas City Neighbors page. I do want to say thank you to all of you. And here's why. It takes all of us stepping up to make a difference and impact in our community. You're not politicians. You are people who just are our neighbors that want to do something good for our neighborhood, our community. We are different than every other municipality in the Kansas City metro area. Literally, we are different. And having a choice in this election is amazing, because lots of communities don't have choices. And we think of, when I ran mayoral race in another municipality, we had 4 candidates and we split the vote, and it became complicated, but that's because nobody was speaking truth and nobody was really talking about the things that were going on. And I appreciate all of you coming to the forum, agreeing to the interviews next week so that the neighbors can get to know you and that they can see that it's not conflict to have multiple people running in a ward. It's actually a privilege to have multiple people that are running in a ward, because we get to choose. We get to see who we align with. It's a beautiful thing, and you all have stepped up to do that. So thank you very, very much. North Kansas City is blessed to have all of you stepping up to the plate. With that, I'm going to say goodnight, and we will be back here in about 10 minutes with the rest of our candidates.
Thank
I
you.
repeat. Yep. Thank you for putting this all together, Mindy. You're great. You guys have a good night.
Good night, guys.